So good evening everyone. Am I audible to everyone? Just anyone can speak.
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
yes, sir.
Okay. Mm, So yesterday we discussed about how the process of modernization began and how the functionalist school was responsible for revival of modernization school and how they proposed a new developmental model and especially the Europe, Western countries, they propagated this theory, saying that uh, the underdeveloped and developing countries they need to follow the footsteps of these advanced countries and to justify their stance on countries those who gained independence after the Second World War, that they belong to a kind of backward uh, pockets, and they conducted series of studies, and Princeton University and Cornell University, both of these universities, they emerged as the center of excellence to conduct research on these developing nations. And especially, as I said, these studies were conducted, covering wide range of aspects, starting from psychology to sociology and economics as well as history. And if we see among the sociologists, Alex Ingalls, then among the economists, uh, Rostow, and among the psychologists, McClelland, how they actually brought in different perspectives of different perspectives of backwardness concerning these countries. And if we see in case of Rostow, actually he said that why actually certain countries economically they were backward, and how he proposed a new methodology and a new model to experience economic development, which is known as the Rostow's takeoff model. And he made a comparison of the taking of flight with the emergence of a development economy. And as we discussed how that he started with the analysis of traditional phase, and he made a comparison of traditional economy with the you know in the beginning stage of flight taking off, and how actually then subsequently he moved to the precondition to take off, where actually he discussed about how certain countries they prepare themselves for achieving or starting a new or following a new economic developmental model. Then subsequently, he went on explaining how flight takes off, the takeoff stage, where actually the flight, flies through after running certain time in the running track, and how actually a particular country's economy it experience different kind of changes, especially in that period. Then he discussed about the drive towards maturity, and especially he made a comparison of certain countries who drive towards a kind of mature economy, and he cited the example of certain developing countries like China. And in the end, he proposed the stage called the age of high mass consumption, where actually the consumeristic society is established, and the economy of a particular country or the country which followed a kind of followed the Rostovian path, how they could emerge successful, and how they could stabilize their economy in the long run. So that stage actually he said it is called uh, uh, the age of high mass consumption, where actually consumerism culture dominates the economy. and economy becomes stable. Then subsequently, we also briefly discussed about Alex Enkels, where actually he proposed and he, proposed a model of what makes a man modern, and he conducted studies covering several countries, especially developing and underdeveloped countries from Asian, African, and Middle East countries, and he proposed the idea actually why people of certain countries or men of some certain countries they are advanced and they are adhered to, or they show or they get accustomed to scientific thought and scientific invention, while scientists in backward countries and underdeveloping countries, individuals of uh, backward countries and underdeveloped countries, they remain backward, and what was the reason of their backwardness. And to assess that, he conducted a series of surveys with a lengthy interview schedule. And if we see with a lengthy questionnaire, and if we see, he came up with certain characteristics of back, people those who could not accept modernity, and he said that those people, those who do not accept scientific, those who lack scientific temper, and those who do not accept scientific innovations, and those who attach themselves with the rigid traditional culture, with rigid traditional practices. And he came up with certain examples like India and other Asian countries, as well as most of the African countries, nations, and several Middle East countries. Then we also briefly discussed about David McClelland, how he said that achievement motivation plays an important role in motivating an individual to aspire to become modern and aspire to achieve development. And he said that the advanced countries, they are actually more sensitive towards generating or providing motivation to the individuals through different incentives, and time to time revising the different policies. And he said that how actually especially motivation matters to achieve or to make a country more developed. Then the question here comes, if at all these perspectives provide a better framework for these developing and underdeveloped countries to achieve development, what was the need of coming up with another school of thought which was led by leading Marxist and Marxist revisionist. Then the question comes here, why actually it took so much of time to come up with a new perspective? Because as we know that the school of modernization, it emerged because the moment they realized that the Soviet Union is rising, China is rising, then the world experienced series of events, political events aligned with left politics. And despite of all these incidents, despite of all these historical events, why actually it took so much time to time for the Marxist school to react or to respond to the modernization school? This is the question we'll discuss. And who are the people actually who responded or who criticized this modernization school, and what are the characteristics they were critical of, and what are the features of modernization school they were critical of? So these points by and large we'll be discussing today. And we'll start with what was the basic proposition on which actually most of the thinkers of Marxist dependency school, they were critical or they were disagreement with the modernization school. First thing, if you remember, if you recollect, as we discussed, it was the traditional culture and traditional practices with regard to these societies of these underdeveloped and developing countries remained the center of analysis for this modernization school, and they kept on accusing the backwardness of these backwardness of culture of these countries, backward culture of these countries. And because of this, uh, this, but then this argument and this stand did not harvest a kind of, or did not bring in the trust, or did not win the trust of most of the critical thinkers of Marxist origin. And they were critical, saying that the countries, those especially the countries like of Asia and Africa and Latin America, these countries, they are backward not because of, not solely because of their backward culture, but there are other reasons which are more important than the backward culture and backwardness in terms of their practices. And if we see, uh, uh, they actually, they were very strong critic of this modernization school, and they brought in several components of, they criticized several components of this modernization school. And this dependency theory, or the Marxist theory of development, it emerged in the late 1950s under the guidance of United Nations Economic Commission for Latin America, Raul Prebis. And Prebis and his colleagues were troubled by the fact that economic growth in the advanced industrialized countries did not necessarily lead to growth in the poorer countries. Indeed, their studies suggested that economic activities in the richer countries often led to serious economic problems in the poorer countries. And if you see, by saying this, he did not only mean that the developed countries, they created nuisance, or they created backwardness in the developing countries or backward countries, but it also said even if they developed on their own country, it will have tremendous impact or tremendous negative consequences these developing and underdeveloped countries, they have to encounter. And if you see how it encounters, if you have understood the logic of capitalism or the logic of economics, this, the once you open the door for foreign direct investment, you have opened the door for crisis. And that is the dependency school believed. And they believed that these developing countries, they are suffering today, or they are backward today, not because of their backward culture, not because of their backward tradition, rather they experienced something which none of the advanced countries could ever experience. And to them, it is the negative consequences of colonialism which made these countries backward. Yesterday, if you remember, recollect correctly, we discussed very briefly about that. And the sole blame, actually, this dependency theory, apart from other aspects, they mostly emphasized, and they were mostly critical of the colonial exploitation this third world and underdeveloped world experienced. And they cited several examples, saying that you know they also provided estimations. If we see Paul Barron's work on colonial exploitation, how actually he made a kind of estimation, saying that if the colonial exploitation, these countries could not have experienced colonial exploitation, they could have emerged as most richest countries, most richest countries in the world. And he cited the example of, Baron actually cited the example of India, saying that the amount of money, the amount of capital, the amount of resources, the British government, the East India Company, they looted from India. It was much more than the GDP of Great Britain. And uh, the dependency school basically said that these developing countries, they actually create a sense of dependency of these underdeveloped countries or backward countries, and through that dependency they made an analysis of the historical relationship between those advanced countries and the backward countries, and they said that historically, if you see, these advanced countries, they kept on exploiting these underdeveloped and backward countries in the name of dependency. Now you take the example of the agricultural revolution India experienced during the period of colonial rule. You take the example of commercialization of agriculture, when actually the British government had a kind of strained relationship with United States of America, and USA stopped exporting fine quality cotton to Britain, and Britain's Lancashire cotton industry incurred immense loss, economic loss during that period, and the supply chain got disturbed because of the difficulties created through the United States passive or negative relationship, the kind of negative relationship Britain developed with the United States. So the colonial, rulers, they started actually exploring the other possibilities, especially in developed and underdeveloped countries. And first, they searched the land they were ruling during those periods. And the Indian farmers, they were encouraged to cultivate cotton, so that if they at all they were switching to cotton cultivation or indigo cultivation, they will be waived off from this land revenue. They will be waived off land revenue, and this led to a kind of condition where actually most of the farmers in India, especially if you see the the belt of Western India, they immediately shifted to cash crops like cotton, and as a result of which, if you see, the accordingly during the period of during the time when Dalhousie was the governor general, he expanded actually the railway system, the Mumbai Thane expressway, the first Indian railway track which was developed, and many people actually, many historians actually wrongly quoted saying that Dalhousie was concerned about the development of transportation communication system, but in fact, actually, he developed the railway system or the railway track to export the or to carry the cottons from different parts of Maharashtra to the Mumbai port, and as a result of which many of the farmers, since the British government declared that the cotton cultivators will not be charged with land revenue, so immediately many of the farmers, they switched to cotton cultivation, and it is not happened only in the western part, it is also happened in case of eastern part. And in Bengal, if you see, many of the farmers, they switched to indigo cultivation, and if you see the as a result of which the Great Bengal famine occurred, because the area under food grain tremendously declined, and the the commercial crop experienced quantum jump in terms of its production, and but then how it the vicious circle of exploitation, how it continued, you see, many of the farmers, they immediately switched to commercial crops like cotton and indigo, but then the moment actually the the bilateral relationship between States of America and Britain got restored, immediately there the first attempt actually they made to revive the supply chain between United States, between America and the Great Britain, and immediately once the United States started exporting fine quality cotton to Lancashire cotton industry, immediately Britain stopped importing cotton from Indian farmers, which because of which many of the Indian farmers incurred financial loss and they were pushed to the peril of crisis. And through this actually the vicious circle of exploitation happened. This is this example I cited, it is one among the prominent examples or important examples which most of the historians like Irfan Habib and others most frequently cited. And there are other instances like if we see the Indian farmers, they produced fine quality cotton and it went to Lancashire cotton industry. Then again it returned back in terms of clothing materials. Then the Indians had to purchase that material paying a hefty price. And it shows that how actually the vicious circle of exploitation and domination continued through colonialism. That is what actually the dependency school of thought, they were critical of the modernization school of thought. They're saying that now you have come up with a methodology, you have come up with series of studies, and your result says that these countries, they are backward because they do not have a kind of modern culture. They are not, they do not accept scientific innovation. Their scientific temper is very less. So these factors, though they are responsible, but they are not the sole criteria to evaluate a country or to justify a country as a backward country. And they said that the entire modernization school remained silent about the colonial exploitation, which none of the advanced countries of the West ever experienced. And then, if we see among those scholars, the prominent scholars, those who proposed or those who are considered to be the original protagonist of dependency school, it was A.G. Frank, Andrew Gunder Frank, who is considered to be the one of the pioneers of dependency school of thought. And but then the dependency school of thought, it tried to cover tried to provide a kind of umbrella like perspective covering different dimensions of power relations, different dimensions of economic relationship. And if we see most dependency theories regard international capitalism as the motive force behind uh, the behind the dependency relationship. And A.G. Frank, as I said, he was one of the earliest dependency theorists. And he said that he classified the countries, especially countries, into two categories. One is the metropolis, and the other one is the satellites. And he said that metropolis are the most advanced pockets or the advanced nations or the advanced regions of a particular country. If you take a particular country's case, if you take the case of India during the British colonial rule, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, these centers are considered as metropolis. Then the satellites are from where actually the colonial government, appropriated resources and exported to these metropolis. And if we see the from rural pockets, they collected land revenue, they collected different agricultural resources, then mineral resources, then they exported from uh, satellite to metropolis like Mumbai, Chennai, then Mumbai, Madras, then Bengal, and from there actually it was transported to Britain. And if you see from a macro perspective, Britain is considered to be the metropolis, and again the metropolis of a country like India become the satellite for the advanced nations. If you see Mumbai, Chennai, and Kolkata became the satellites of Britain. Great Britain, and they had to export the raw materials. They had to export the harvested crops. They have to export the mineral resources to the to the metropolis, and as a result of which this the chain of exploitation continued. You see how actually first the metropolis of Mumbai, the metropolis of West Bengal, the Bengal, the most Kolkata, then the metropolis of Madras, how they exploited the satellites, basically the rural pockets, and they appropriated the resources, and how again they got exploited by the external metropolis like the Great Britain. Then mm, Then, what is the central position of this dependency school of thought? Basically, the dependency school of thought, it believes that in the name of development, these developed nations, they are creating underdevelopment. Basically, through resource appropriation and resource exploitation. Now, you take the example of establishment of a country. You take the example of the Elon Musk. Actually, why actually he is trying to establish a car Tesla manufacturing factory in India. And you see why actually Nestle is producing Maggi and other products in India. Why don't actually they, since it is highly mechanized, yeah, they can go for producing in large scale in the United States of America itself. There is no need of coming to India, going to Thailand, going to Indonesia, going to Bangladesh, and establishing a manufacturing unit in those underdeveloped countries, and expanding the business. There is no need actually. Simply they can produce in United States of America and they can export it. And since it is highly mechanized, there is no point. But then the concept here comes actually, if you have understood Marx properly, it is not the machines which can generate profit. It is the man, it is the laborer who can generate profit. If you take the example of make a comparison between a human labor and a machine labor, you will find out, if you feed a tractor or a power tiller uh, 1 liter of petrol, it will have a kind of fixed limit to function, right? If you put 1 liter of petrol in a tractor or a power tiller, it can continue, it can run for 1 hour. It cannot exceed more than 1 hour. Rather, actually, it can decrease its functionality or decrease its efficiency or decrease its productivity, but it cannot go beyond 1 hour. However hard you might try, you cannot actually drive the tractor putting 1 liter petrol more than 1 hour. Just for example, I am citing machines. They have they cannot actually go beyond their functionality, and that is why actually Marx said that machines cannot generate profit. It is laborers actually. But when it comes to laborers, you can actually employ a laborer, you can pay him for 5 hours, you can make him work for 15 hours. That is the logic actually Marx provided. And based on that logic, actually these advanced countries, they are actually coming to these developed underdeveloped and developing nations, so that in the first place they can actually exploit the laborers, cheap laborers, or the reserve army of cheap laborers in from these developing countries or backward countries. The second, actually they can utilize and extract the resources from these developing and underdeveloped countries, and they can manufacture goods and generate more profit than the manufacturing unit of developed countries. So that is based on that logic, they always explore the possibility of establishing a manufacturing unit, or a establishing an industry in the developing or uh, underdeveloped countries. Then the distinction between underdevelopment and development places the poor countries of the world in a profoundly different historical context. These countries are not behind or catching up with the richer countries of the world. They are not poor because they lagged behind the scientific transformations or enlightenment values of the European states. They are poor because they were coercively integrated into the European economic system. Now you take the example of uh, different currencies. See, what is the point actually? Who can tell us that your currency or Indian rupee is equivalent to 90 rupees or 80 rupees of US American dollar? But then actually we are also part of that international uh, transaction network, and we cannot actually simply uh, come out of that saying that no, we have a different country, oh, currency, and we will protect it. And it cannot actually happen. That is the reason actually, if you see, the Indian currency got devalued several times, we had almost 30-40 rupees. $1 was equivalent to 30-40 rupees. But now you see 20 rupees, 30 rupees, like that. But now you see, after series of number, time, several times the currency devalues. After the currency devaluation, the equivalence of the Indian rupee came down to more than 80 rupees. And this creates a kind of dependency. Now you cannot actually go for purchasing something which is available in United States of America with a rupee, right? You will have to spend your 80 rupees or 90 rupees to get $1. Then only by spending $1 you can buy a product, or you can buy a good uh, from the USA. So this is how actually the exploitation takes place, and the division of resources, the diversion of resources. Now you see, we are no one to judge actually who is correct and who is wrong. Nobody knows actually what happened in Ukraine, what happened in Russia. Nobody knows what happened in Afghanistan, what happened in Iran. And you see, in the name of wiping out, arresting terrorism, the United States of America came up with series of plans, and they captured the Middle East in the name of erasing terrorism. But then, to what extent actually they could erase it? If you see, in under what condition actually they left a country 2 years over, 4 years back, when Joe Biden actually came into power. And the basically the critics, especially the Marxists, they say that since USA could able to extract the crude oil for almost 100 years, now they lost their interest on Middle East countries, and they do not want to spend more on those countries. And that was the reason actually they went into vacating Iran. And the reason is, but then see how actually they extracted the resources, they diverse the resources from one country to another country. They created their own oil depot, and they have started exporting it. And since they ruled for more than a decade, they accumulated a huge amount of crude oil, which would bring them, which makes them self sufficient, at least for uh, some decades. So we'll take a break here, then we'll reassemble again after 10 to 15 minutes. Is that fine for everyone?
Okay, sir.
Sir.
So we'll start again. Uh, if we see the dependency theory, basically, uh, apart from all of its methodological and definitional deficiencies, dependency theory has been empirically undermined by the recent historical experience of many less developed countries, and especially those who may still hold to its fundamental premise that uh, underdevelopment is a process that perpetuates economic backwardness rather than a condition from which less developed countries can escape. They usually ignore recent economic history. And basically, if we see, this has been contended uh, here that dependency is useful in the limited sense that it offers an international political economic framework for understanding underdevelopment. And the positive one of the strength of dependency school of thought is it provides a kind of macro perspective through which actually you can go for a comparative analysis of different countries. You take the example of A.G. Frank's analysis, which where actually he provided a kind of comparative analysis why certain countries which were ruled under or ruled under the aegis of colonial government, they had experienced different levels of exploitation, and how actually those countries, those who experienced economic prosperity by exploiting these underdeveloped or developing nations, they have a different macro view. So basically, if we see dependency theory, it's a perspective basically which provides a kind of macro view, and it helps us to make a comparative analysis of uh, mm, economic development. And uh, the most beautiful part of this perspective is it not only it is it did not actually overemphasize the cultural part, or did not emphasize the psychological part which the modernization school emphasized. Rather, actually, it brought out a kind of perspective which is crucial to make out whether regional disparity or social inequality is at you know is working in the condition of in the context of economic development or not. And uh, then mm, the dependency school also will also be useful in the context of the recent globalization, which actually, even though the earlier dependency school of thought, basically, if you see, you start with A.G. Frank, then Samir Amin, Paul Byron. I know those, uh, historians, social scientists, they emphasized by and large, their analysis is confined to only the colonial period and the few years after the colonial regime. But then the others, the recent changes the world experience in terms of neoliberal economy, in terms of globalization, those perspectives are rarely touched upon. And if we see the recent, literature by many of the economists, do not, those who do not actually belong to that, family, the Marxist family, but still then they provide a kind of important perspectives. Like you take the example of Joseph Stiglitz, who whose contribution fetched him Nobel Prize in economics because he was the economist. He was one of the rarest economists who worked with United Nations, who worked with global organization. But then he came up with a suggestion saying that globalization did not create an equal world. It created an unequal world with unequal opportunities, and it did not provide benefits. In a kind of equal scale. So, Joseph Stiglitz' work, if you see globalization and its discontent, it is one of the classic work which shows actually how actually the economy is beyond economics, and economy is not only determined by the sole principles of rationality. There are other social conditions which can actually influence the economic behavior of an individual, the economic condition of a country, and that is what actually the dependency school of thought, it did not actually leave any stone unturned to justify their stance. Then, if we see, uh, basically, we have learned that dependency theories have a basically originated, recently, and it was developed during the middle of 20th century in Latin America, and mainly as a critic of modernization theories, and they rejected the argument of modernization theories that modernity and development reach bottom most in its own due course. They argued that the economic activities in the richer countries often led to serious economic problems in the poorer countries, and uh, the dependency theory basically it examined the social context that led to the origin of dependency theory, and uh, how actually the continuance of underdevelopment is still relevant in the contemporary world. These are the some of the important aspect this dependency school of thought tried to address. Then we'll move to the human development approach. The basically, if we see what do we mean by human development approach, the human development approach came into picture when for the first time the human development report of got published in 1990, and it brought the people into the center stage of the development debate. And it says that the purpose of development is to offer people more options, and one of their option is access to income, not as an end to itself but as a means to acquire human well-being. But there are other options as well, including long life, knowledge, political freedom, personal security, community participation, and guaranteed human rights. People cannot be reduced to single dimension as economic creatures. The report is basically, if you see, it is essentially meant to point out the important aspects of development which addresses human dimensions, and it uh, basically this report is meant to analyze practical country experience to distill practical insights, and the human development report makes contributions in measure and policy analysis of human development. And the first time in the 1990, the concept and measurement of human development came into force, and the report addresses as its main issue with regard to concept and measurement of human development. The focus was on the people and on how development enlarges their choices. And the report discusses uh, the meaning and measurement of human development, proposing a new composite index. Just a minute. Then, in the year 1991, the financing human development came into, uh, you know, picture, the lack of political commitment rather than financial resources is often the real cause of human development, they said, and this is the main conclusion of Human Development Report, the second in a series of annual reports on the subject. Then, the global dimensions of human development. The richest 20% of the population now receives 150 times the income of the poorest 20%. And the report suggests a two-pronged strategy to break away from the situation. First, making massive investments in their people and strengthening national technological capacity can enable some developing countries to acquire strong competitive edge in international markets. Then in the 1993, we had something called people's participation. The report examined how and what extent people participate in the events and processes. Then 1994, the new dimension of security came into existence, and the report introduced a new concept of human security which equates security with people rather than territories, with development rather than arms and ammunition. Then 1995, we brought this human development report brought in a kind of important dimension to its fold and analysis, and it was gender and human development, and the report analyzed the progress made in reducing gender disparities in the past few decades and highlighted the wide and persistent gap between women's expanding capabilities and limited opportunities. And two new measures were introduced for ranking countries on a global scale by their performance. And 1996, we had something called economic growth and human development. And the report argued that economic growth, if not properly managed, can jobless, voiceless, rootless, and futureless, and the determinant to human development. And the quality of growth is therefore as important as its quantity for poverty reduction, human development, and sustainability. Then the human development to eradicate poverty. Eradicating poverty everywhere is more than a moral imperative, and it is a practical, rather, it is a practical possibility. And the most important message of the Human Development Report 1997 was the world was the resource and the know how to create poverty free world in less than a generation. And the 1998, the you know the concept like consumption was included into the analysis. The high level of consumption and production in the world today, the power and potential of technology and information present great opportunities. These components were included. Then 1991 9, we had globalization with a human face, global markets, global technology, global ideas, global solidarity can actually enrich and create a better world for the people of the world. And the challenge is to ensure that the benefits are shared equitably and that this increasing interdependence works for people, not just for profits. And the report argues that globalization is not new, but that the present era of globalization, driven by competitive global markets, is outpacing the governance of markets and the repercussions on people. And in the year 2000, the human uh, rights came into the picture, and the Human Development Report included human rights component as a kind of important component to achieve human development. Then in 2001, we had something called making new technologies work for human development. As we know, the glory of technology is the story of mankind, and technology networks are transforming the traditional map of development, expanding people's horizons, and creating the potential to realize its decade progress that required generation in the past. Then in 2002, one of the important component called deepening democracy in a fragmented world emerged as the major, uh, theme of the Human Development Report, and the democratic values, the ethos of democracy were given emphasis and given importance. In the year 2003, the Millennium Development Goals, was proposed, where actually the major objective was to end human poverty. And if we see in 2004, the cultural liberty in today's diverse world remained as a kind of emerged as a kind of new theme of the Human Development Report. And if you see, the report encouraged the different stakeholders of a nation to protect the diverse culture and give the people the cultural liberty to accept and adhere to their own culture or to the other culture. Then human development basically addresses the human in development, all those elements which makes a person human, not only in terms of what see he needs for basic survival such as food, clothing or shelter, health, but a sense of dignity, what Adam Smith called the ability to mix with others without being ashamed to appear in public. Then mm, there are also perspective, like you take the example of Amartya Sen actually, who said that development as freedom. The moment you feel free, the moment you realize you have absolute freedom to choose your take your own decision, then you are empowered, you are developed. And that is what actually the he proposed, and it was widely accepted. Then the gender perspective on development. As many of us know, gender is a social construction. The sex is a biological construction, and gender is a social construction. The gender values, the gender roles, it is shaped by the society. And if you see the Indian society, not only only in India, but there are several backward, underdeveloping, or developing countries, those who still, in today's time also, they are struggling to provide equal opportunities for the women. And thanks to the Human Development Report, which came up with a kind of gender, came up with a kind of report where actually they highlighted the gender component, and they included gender as a component of human development. Then the development planning in India. Basically, if we see, uh, till 1950s, the developmental planning in India is considered as a kind of social welfare service, as the only category which tackled problems of women among the other target groups. And the Central Social Welfare Board set up in 1952, and it was confronted with the arduous problems of the lack of any government machinery and for welfare of organizations. And if we see, we had different plan, initiatives and 5-year plans in which the gender components were given maximum emphasis. If you see the sixth plan, it gave emphasis on women and development. Similarly, the seventh plan emphasized on women and child development. Then the eighth five-year plan, it emphasized uh, in the context of population control, uh, then achieving lower mortality. So these were the few five-year plans where actually extensively the gender component was discussed, and uh, the policy and planning for women. If you see a review of policy formulation and planning for women's development in India reflects that the lack of effort in planning and policy formulation for women in the states is responsible for the backwardness and non-implementation of important policies in India. And mm, if we see, there is a very little conceptualization regarding women's needs in the necessary formulations. If you see, there are several actually centers which can go for better studies, creating better studies on women and development. You take, we had SB Women's College, we had Kotia Women's College. Those who are from uh, you know mm, Odisha, they can understand actually. There are several departments were also introduced by the University Grant Commission. Now you see Center for Women Studies. These centers were introduced in universities and premier central institutions and state institutions. To take the example of central universities, many of the central universities, they came up with Center for Women Studies, and they receive special grant annually to conduct research and to conduct surveys or to conduct research on issues concerned with to related to women. And the plan from the policy and planning front, if you see, they you know the government as well as the civil society organizations, they give priority and emphasis to women development. And the classic example, as I said, the Center for Women, opening of Center for Women Studies, through which the government brings several policies. They go for surveys, they go for conducting research to understand why actually still the gender gap is uh, you know there. And now the recently the new concepts like the gender budgeting uh, you know uh, came into force, and many of the planners and policymakers, they are emphasizing on this aspect of gender budgeting. And that is what for today. uh, so any doubt regarding today's class? Anyone can answer actually.
No, sir.
No. So, but then the question is just how many of you are from sociology background? No, none of you. Tapaswini,
Yes, sir.
uh, what is which course, what you had in your undergraduation, UG?
Sorry, sir, I can answer. I am from sociology.
Oh, you are from sociology. You
Yes,
had,
sir.
where did you study? Your college, I mean your college?
Hmm. Sir, I am from Imati Devi College.
Murti Devi College, okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you must be familiar with these concepts, the concepts we are discussing about in sociology of development. At least some amount of familiarity you must be having, right? Okay. So Monisha Pradhan, I think she's not there. Soumya Sucharita,
Yes, sir.
Soumya, you are from which background? Basically, what is your academic background? What
Sir, I
course?
am from BSc Botany.
BSc Botany. Where did
Yes,
you
sir.
your UG? BSc
Sir, from Sri Jagannath Mahavidyalaya.
Jagannath Mahavidyalaya. Which place?
Sir, Jagatsinghpur.
Oh, Jagatsinghpur. It is in Gaugaon.
Yes, sir.
Then Vishwajivan,
Yes. So from BSc Agriculture background, sir.
BSc Agriculture.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So Farjin,
Yes, sir.
what you had in your undergraduation? Which subject actually you studied?
Sociology.
Sociology. From which college?
Salepur.
Sailawala Women's College.
Salepur Auto.
Salepur Autonomous College. Okay. So all of you are from Odisha. Acha.
Yes, sir.
So Soumya Sucharita and Vishwajivan are from non-sociology background. Then Monisha, she has not responded. Probably she joined and she left.
Yes, sir.
Oh, Monisha, you are back. So I was asking, we are discussing, Monisha, in which subject you
Actually,
had
my
your
network was not
undergraduation?
good. So I did my graduation from Nagaland.
From Nagaland.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. From in which subject?
I'm from sociology department.
Oh, from sociology.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So those who are from sociology, you may not experience difficulties because many of the concepts you are familiar with. For example, if you take the Marxian conception of development, class analysis, you are familiar. And with regard to modernization, you must be knowing at least some part. You must be familiar with the concepts like modernization, what is modernity, what are the characteristics of modernization, who are the people, those who worked on modernization. So you must be familiar. But those who are not from sociology background, my advice would be, you do not confine yourself to the reading materials provided by Indira Gandhi National Open University. You can also explore the other, reference books. You can note down a book's name. It is the Sociology of Development. Just a minute, I'll check the exact title. It is, I think, Development. Okay, there is a book called Social Change and Development. It's a wonderful book, actually. It's a wonderful book, and the theoretical coverage, if you see modernization, dependency, world system, beautifully covered. and the book name is Social Change and Development, Modernization, Dependency, and World System Theories. And it is written by Alvin Yo So. Alvinyoso. Alvin Yoso. It's a very popular book actually. You can go for reading this book. It's a very, systematically they have, Alvin So has written or designed the book, designed the manuscript, and you can go for it. It is very easy to understand. The historical. He created a kind of developed a kind of historical discourse how the concept of modernization came into the minds of those researchers or the planners of advanced countries, so-called advanced countries like USA. These concepts doesn't come in your dream. It is not that you are sleeping, all of a sudden you had a dream that you will have to work on a project on modernization, and immediately you woke up and went on to applying that. No, they went for rigorous planning. And what were the historical conditions because of which this perspective emerged, that we must understand actually. And you can use actually Indira Gandhi National Open University's reference material as a reading reference, because it is written by, say, all senior sociologists of the country, and it is well designed basically. But then, in addition to that, you will also have to read, that book. And the reason is, if I ask a question, Tapaswini, can you tell me why you have chosen sociology for masters? There must be some reason, right? For which you selected. You can go. So if you have difficulties, you can also speak out in Odia. No, not an issue. I can understand Odia. It won't be a problem.
Sir, I love to read sociology, so I chose, I chose it.
Oh, you have selected sociology because you love it. This is the
Yes.
then then I think we must celebrate this. The reason. Rarely people select subjects for subject of subjects because they enjoy reading that subject, especially in the contemporary times. Virgin,
No, sir.
Virgin, am I correct in pronouncing your name? Is it the correct pronunciation? Virgin,
Fuzzy. Z-double-N.
Virgin. Okay. So why you have choose sociology? Civil service.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Vishwajivan, why from agriculture to sociology?
Sir, actually, one of our subject was agriculture extension, and
Okay.
there was a portion named rural sociology and educational psychology.
Okay.
Uh, yes, sir. That's why
My
I have a,
specialization
I had a
sociology.
keen interest.
My specialization is sociology of agriculture actually.
Yes, sir.
You have anything to ask? You said you told something. No.
Where should we read the theorist part, like
Theory,
sociological theories? Yes, sir.
general
Paper
social
one.
theories, or this paper one classical sociological theories.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Vishwajivan, I would suggest you to go for a book written by Raymond Aron. Raymond Aron. Okay. Master in main currents in sociological thought. Okay. The book's title is Main Currents in Sociological Thought, part one, part two. It is very descriptive, and it is full of examples. And you will rarely find out the author's own interpretation. Basically, when you read a theory, the sole purpose of reading a theory is you must read a theory the way actually the particular theorist written that. And if you go for other books like there is a person called George Ridger. He has also written sociological theories, but then he also included his own interpretation. And I would suggest you go for Raymond Aron, because first you must understand actually how Marx conceived capitalism, how Auguste Comte perceived positivism, how Spencer perceived theory of evolution. You must understand those concepts from their perspective. Then if you read George Ridger, then you can understand actually how different interpretations can be made. So basically, if you read that book, that will be that will suffice. That will be sufficient to understand the classical theory. And with regard to development, sociological theories of sociology of development, you can go for Alvin or so, but then you must follow actually Indira Gandhi National Open University's reading material. They are very important because they are written by all the leading professors and faculty members across the country, and they provide a kind of wider coverage to the concepts. But for theories, for a better understanding, you must read Alvin also for this paper. And for paper one, as you said, you can go for, as I said, you can go for Raymond Aron. It's a wonderful book. You will read like a novel. You will read sociological theories like a novel, like in a story form, and it will be easier for you to understand the concepts. For example, you take the example of social fact. It will be difficult actually to understand in if you go with George Rizzer, okay? Because social fact, it is, if you read Raymond Aron, it is so clearly defined. Social fact is something which is the way of thinking, feeling, acting, and it is always happens through a kind of external and coercive force, which is external to the individual. But then there will be series of examples why actually Durkheim considered suicide as a social fact, why it is not a psychological fact. From the beginning, Durkheim said suicide is not a psychological fact, it is a social fact. Why actually it is a social fact? So that example actually Raymond Aron cited. If you go for that book, you will have no doubts over reading sociological theories. But then also you just I want to know that whether that paper is over, or someone will teach that paper.
Covered 50% of that portion.
Almost it is over.
Just 7 left.
Okay, okay. So you can go for actually that book. That is a wonderful book. And in addition to that, if you want to, after reading that book, if you read Ridger, you will enjoy the interpretation actually. So that is what.
One more question, sir. How should I read? We should read one, for example, about suicide. Then all thinkers' perspective, or we should read about one, for example, Auguste Comte, about his all his theories. Then we should come to another theorist.
No,
How
if you
should we
go,
read?
if you come actually, one after another, you will better understand actually the chronology, Vishwajivan. The chronology is important actually. Why actually Comte proposed an idea of social static and social dynamics. Okay. Then why actually he proposed the transformation of human mind from theological to metaphysical to positivistic? Why actually he developed a model of hierarchy of sciences? Then subsequently, if you start reading after Comte, if you go for Durkheim, you will understand a better perspective with regard to a kind of more methodological point of view. Durkheim, how actually he went into explaining uh, about different religions, different events. Example, you take the example of suicide, and he provided a rigorous methodology. Comte did not provide a kind of methodology, though he provided positivistic method for studying, but then he did not apply himself. So other sociologists similarly, they were they did not apply that. So, but then after that, if you see, it was Durkheim, then Marx, Weber. If you continue, if you chronologically, if you read, then you can establish the relationship between where actually Comte left and from where Durkheim picked up, Marx picked up, and what are the points Durkheim was critical of, what are the points Comte was critical of, right? Many of you may not be knowing that why actually Comte is called as a conservatist. The reason is, if you read Plato, Aristotle, Rousseau, then you will understand actually why Comte was opposed to them. Comte said that Plato is suggesting that revolution will bring change. But then Comte said if society continues revolution, every day people will revolt, then there will be no social order, no social stability. How society will survive? Every day, if society will revolt on all small issues, on every issues, then there will be no existence of social order. Society will be disturbed every time. So social order and stability is important in a society. Revolution is not the answer for step for a stable society. That is what actually he meant. That is why actually he considered to be a conservatist, and he agreed with Devonald, Daymaster. They, to an extent, he was critical of some of their arguments, but then he also supported them in many events. So, but then if you read chronologically, if you read Rousseau, if you read Plato, if you read Aristotle, then you come to Comte, you will understand actually what they said and where actually Comte differed. So, in case of after reading Comte, if you go to Marx, you will understand actually why actually where Comte said that social order is important, stability is important. Marx said that stability is not important, it is the conflict, class struggle, constant friction will bring change. Right, but then chronologically, if you read, you will understand actually. That is, you got my point? Okay. So Soumya Sucharita, why you have selected social
I am preparing for civil service examination and there I choose it an optional.
civil service? That is
Yes,
very
sir.
good.
So I took
Many
in
of the
yes,
sociology
sir.
uh, is good actually. Last time Odisha civil service, more than 30% opted sociology. uh,
I
Odisha.
can't hear you. There is some lag in your voice.
But what?
Sir, your voice is not clear.
Now it is clear.
Yes, sir.
No, I said sociology clear civil service by taking sociology. Sociology and geography. Last time, Odisha civil service exam, more than 30% of those who cleared Odisha, they opted sociology. So it's a good decision, but then you also read carefully.
Yes,
Systematically, that
sir.
get misguided. So I think with this we'll conclude. Are you getting my point? But I,
Hello.
uh, no, I'm asking everyone. You know, points, whatever actually I am teaching, are you getting or not? You are understanding, or it is difficult for you to understand with regard to this paper, Sociology of Development? Vishwajivan, okay, am I audible? Audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll conclude here, okay? We'll meet again tomorrow.
Sir, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay.